The best part about working is that I keep getting paid. So we're gonna budget my paycheck together. My channel is all about financial transparency while I pay off a mountain of debt and try to invest 6 figures before I turn 30. And part of being financially transparent is sharing every 2 weeks how I budget our paycheck. I think it's really helpful to see how other people manage their money, what they do with their money, where it goes, how they spend it, yada, yada, yada. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I will take you through my whole routine when it comes to payday. I was paid last Friday, so let's dive in, starting with my income. If you're new around here, this is a budget template I use for every single one of my videos, as well as my real budget. Like, this is what I actually budget with. The way that it works is at the beginning of the year, I set monthly targets that I expect to be able to hit, and that's kind of where I want to allocate my money. And then every single month, those targets pull into my budget, and I can see my expected expenses and income and all the things here. And then I go through and I track my expenses. But the cool thing about my budget template is it also allows me to assign money before I actually spend it. So I can set aside money for my mortgage before my mortgage is actually due. And then this money carries over in buckets if it's not spent in a particular month. And that just gives me a little bit of buffer and wiggle room for the future. It also helps with my savings goals. I can see how much I have allocated towards each of my sinking funds in these buckets. So that's a basic overview of what you're looking at right here. Let's go ahead and plug in the numbers. I was paid on the 5th, and literally what I do is I open my banking app because I have everything direct deposit into my checking account, and I just look at how much I was paid, and this time it was $1,968.88. So we're just gonna plug that in. This is my work. Whoops, I wish I made $19,000 bi-weekly. I live with a partner and we split expenses. I'm gonna talk about how we split expenses at the end of this video. He contributes a certain amount of our income to our shared expenses, and then he likes his privacy, so he doesn't want his like full income out there. He contributes $5,000 a month though for us to live off of. So I'll plug in half of that as if he was paid bi-weekly. So that's $2,500. So for the month, we have an income of $4,468.88, giving us total cash of $4,055. This last month was technically negative. This total cash is actually wrong. I have been saying that I need to go in and fill this in, but we'll budget with it. Let's pretend like we're in the negative. So we have $4,055. The first thing that I do with every single paycheck is put money towards my debt. So I made a payment the Wednesday before I got paid because it takes 2 days to post, $1,075. But I have the email confirmation of that payment. It has not posted as pending to my account, and it has not posted as a payment to my account. So that's interesting. Today is a Sunday as I'm filming this, so I can't do anything about it. I just noticed it today. I'm gonna see if it posts on Monday and if there's just a weird glitch that it didn't pull through before then. If not, I'll call my loan servicer because that's $1,000 I'm not trying to miss out on. So I'm gonna plug it in, and then I'm just gonna leave myself a little note that I need to follow up on that. And it's fine because it hasn't pulled from my account, so it's not like this money is missing, but I don't want to hit send again and then have it pull again, you know, and accidentally pay $2,000 that I'm not expecting to spend right now. That's the first thing I do. That leaves me with $2,980 left to spend this month. I'm gonna go ahead and just assign money towards all of our fixed expenses and see where that lands me. And because I'm lazy, I'm just gonna go in here and copy and paste it from last month. Okay, so as you can see, this assign columns means that I am expecting to spend this money. It is spoken for, it has a job. That leaves me with $1,771.38 left to work with right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign all of our variable expenses for the month. Again, we haven't spent any of these. I'm just giving the money a job. And again, out of laziness, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull them from our last month. We still have $897 left to work with. I don't know the numbers, and I like to do everything like all the way. I don't like to split it 50-50, but I think I can save for all, if not most of my buckets with that $800. So let's see. Again, we're gonna pull this from the last month. $185, too much. So if I just don't save for savings and clothing right now, I will be $1 over, which is fine. I have $1.50 in the negative that I need to cover with the next paycheck. That's literally fine. So again, the way that I think about my money and the way that I just like to have it is rather than save like $40 here and $30 here when there are $60 and $80 buckets that need to be saved for, I like to just fully set aside the money. And then if it's not covered in this one, it can be covered in the next one. And that works for me because I know that I've set these targets based on the income, and I know that I'm hitting these targets appropriately. So I'm not super off base. I know the money's coming in the next paycheck. I'm not worried about it being there. So I just like to fully finish out a category before I move on to the next. If you have more variable income, or if you're just getting started, it might be smart to set aside half your rent from each paycheck, just so you get the hang of where your money's going and how much you truly have left over at the end of the month. But I've been in this for a while. I know kind of what things look like. If we're looking at what I did, because I kind of glanced over it, for our fixed expenses, I set aside all of the money that I'm gonna need to cover those bills. And it might be too much money, but if it's too much money, then it'll carry over in a bucket for the next month. That way, if I'm budgeting $187 for gas and power, but we have to kick on the heat and I end up spending $300, I have money in a bucket to cover that. It's kind of why I do that for fixed expenses. I also went ahead and set aside the money for my groceries and everything for the month. So that's groceries, eating out, gas, everything for our cars, our household expenses, which usually covers like soap, shampoo, things we need to run the household. I said, hey, all the money is spoken for. Everything I made from this paycheck is gonna go to cover that. So even though we haven't spent the money, like I haven't bought shampoo this month, there's money there. And again, if we don't spend all that money, it'll roll over in a bucket. That way, if we have a month where we have to buy shampoo and sheets and paper towels and everything, there's extra money in case it's over what we budget for every single month. And then finally, I save towards my sinking funds. My sinking funds, everything that I have is kind of a sinking fund, right? If I'm setting aside more money than I expect to spend in a month, then it's a sinking fund for that category. But I have specific savings goals that are non-monthly expenses that do come up throughout the year. So some fun ones that I have are like travel and ski passes. We also save intentionally for our credit card annual fees because we like to use credit cards, but when you get sprung a $400 annual fee, that can kind of mess with your budget in a month. So we just save a little bit every month for that. An adult one is car maintenance. So I'm saving regularly for car maintenance. That way, if I have a repair popped up, there's already a savings account for that and I'm not pulling from my emergency fund, because realistically, part of owning a car is having to maintain that car. So it's not really an emergency because it is something you can expect, whereas an emergency is something truly unexpected. And I guess for me, the way that I think of finances, if I had my dream financial situation and just had endless money to save towards things, there would be nothing unexpected, because I would have a roof sinking fund. I would have all these different sinking funds for all those emergency type situations. But realistically, like I just set aside a bucket of money for the big bad stuff. That would be like a medical emergency, a major house repair, losing my job, things like that. But I do what I can to be prepared with expenses that I can expect are gonna come, and that's what my sinking funds are for. Now, with that being said, it shows all of our combined expenses and then most of our savings. Jake does save for things independently with his income. Like we have a few major house projects and things like that. So this budget shows our combined expenses, but in reality, we aren't married, so we haven't truly combined our expenses or our incomes. Our money is not joint. So the budget doesn't reflect really what we individually pay for. It just kind of shows the overall picture, which I think is more helpful for understanding our lifestyle and how we fund it and seeing how I actually manage my expenses and what that looks like. It's a pretty simple process, as you can tell. It's really just plug and chug once you get it set up. I thought it was more helpful to show our combined living and everything, because before I was just putting $900 towards him. That didn't show like what we were actually spending monthly. But I want to emphasize that our finances are not actually joint. We're not married. We're living in sin and we live together here in this house, but Jake owns the house and Jake pays for the house. I am not on the title. I do not expect to be on the title. I don't expect to pay for any of the house. If we broke up, it would be his house and I would go find somewhere else to live. Very unlikely to happen, but regardless. So with that, Jake pays his mortgage. I do not pay any money towards him to go towards the mortgage. It is his mortgage. We didn't want to complicate things by having me pay him for part of that mortgage. There's an argument of equity and whatever. I took out a butt ton of money to go to school and I'm in debt for that. I pay for my debt. We're still a team, so it makes sense for him to pay his mortgage and me to have lower living expenses so I can aggressively pay my debt, because we have a combined goal of being financially free, but those are two separate entities. Otherwise, we split our expenses more or less based on income. He makes more than me. He pays a larger share of our combined expenses, like eating out and our utilities and all those things, groceries, etc. I think if our situation was less complicated, we would do a truly equitable split of like a 40-60 percentage based on what our incomes are. We do have the complications of a mortgage and debt. So that's just, we don't pay towards each other's debt essentially. But personally, I think an equitable split is most fair for both parties, because you can share more of like a quality of life and the burden of that quality of life without burdening yourself financially. And that would make a lot of sense for us, especially because we have a very large discrepancy in income. Ultimately, we talk about our finances a lot and we both kind of came to an agreement that aligned with our future goals. And I think that's what's most important. If getting the conversation started is, hey, you make more than me and it's hard to pay our shared expenses, that's a good place to start. But then also talking about what the big picture is. If your goal is to save more money and your partner is able to support you in that because they make more money and can still fund a lifestyle and you both agree on that, then that's great. Anyways, that's how I budget my paycheck. I think it's really helpful to budget in advance and set money aside rather than trying to go back and cover expenses with what you've been paid. So if you're able to do that, 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you want to stick around while I pay off this mountain of debt and invest my way towards retirement, I am sharing the process openly and freely here, and I think the transparency can be really inspiring. So go ahead and subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.